Okay, today we're going to finish section 1.2. Okay, we're still going to be working on these last two learning targets, working with these circle problems. All right, but they're going to be the more difficult ones, as you're about to see. Okay, so we'll be challenging you today. Let's jump ahead to number 14. The directions say write the standard form of the equation of the circle with the given characteristics. Notice what we need for this type of problem. If we have the center and the radius, we're ready. The problem with 14, we don't have the radius yet. Okay, so that's what you need to realize. We have an unknown radius. So we need to solve that problem right away. All right, I need some room for the work, so I don't want to use up all of that for this little diagram, but I think a lot of you are visual learners. So let's get a little rough sketch of the big picture here. Tiny little coordinate plane. Like I said, this is just rough, just approximate it. -1, 2 is somewhere up here. And a solution point means it's on the graph. We talked about that in section 1.1. If something was a solution to the equation, it was on the graph. So a solution point at 3, 4 is somewhere over here, okay? So that is on the graph. So if that's the center, and that's a point on the outer edge of the circle, then our circle is kind of looking something like this, right? Okay. All right. So the reason I wanted to show you that is to help you figure out how are we going to figure out the radius or get a plan for it, right? It's the distance from here to here. Key word, as I just said, distance from here to here. Okay. Last section, we have the distance formula now at our disposal, right? So that's how we're going to find the radius. Okay, that's the toughest part of this problem, overcoming that obstacle of realizing I have to find the distance from the center, which is given, to the solution point, which is given. Okay, so the distance will be equal to, or I could even put r equals right now, square root. Now I haven't memorized, but if you didn't, you'd be using your resources here to pull from the distance formula. It says x2 minus x1, right? So it's 3. Take away a -1, quantity squared, plus difference of y's, 4 minus 2 quantity squared. And then let's simplify it. So this is going to be 4, right? 4 squared is 16. And this quantity gives me 2 squared, so that's 4. All right, now if we're just looking for a final answer that has a radical, then I'd want you to simplify this. But, because 4 goes into 20, we can simplify it. But just wait on that because our end result is to throw the radius in here and square it. So let's just not simplify it right now. Okay, so goal accomplished of finding radius. Look, we have center now. We have radius now, right? Radius is going to be square root of 20. So let's plug everything in for h, k, and r. And we'll be able to satisfy the directions of writing this in standard form. So x minus h plus y minus k equals my radius of square root of 20 squared. Okay, let's just simplify it and we'll have our final answer. Make this x plus 1. Square root of 20. Take a square root of something, turn around and square it again. We're back to where we started. So that's why these are gone. Okay, so there's example 14. Okay, moving on to the next page. All right, so when the equation of the circle is in general form, by the way, this is general form. We haven't done much with general form yet, but it just means everything's multiplied out. Like if I expanded this and FOILed it and simplified it, we could get it to general form. Okay, these ones start out in general form. Okay, so when we're asked to put it in standard form, if it's in general form, what we have to do is complete the square. And complete the square has multiple steps, so I want to make sure I provide you with those steps. Let's write the steps for this right in this success criteria box, okay? So home, I'm going to pause this so I save the time. And so copy these steps for completing the square into that box. Do note this is not a 6, it's a b for the coefficient in front of x for a quadratic. So b over 2 and square it for both quantities. Balance the equation, add it to both sides, and then we'll factor and finish the problem, okay? All right, so here we go. Let's give it a try on 17, and then I'll have you guys try for 18. Okay, so step 1 says to rearrange the equation. So to rearrange it, what we want to do is put our x variables next to each other, the y's next to each other, and we want to get the constant term out of the way. So do something like this. X squared plus 4x, and we group them together in quantities. Now let's put the y's next to each other. Maybe wondering, why is he doing this? You'll see why. It's just a technique that works. And take this minus 4 and let's add that to both sides. Okay, scoot it out of the way. Okay, so step 1 is done. Step 2, calculate half of b and square it for both quantities. All right, so here's my b terms, right? The 4 and the 2. So I'm going to do this kind of off to the margin. You might want to as well, just so you have a way to slow down and think about it. I'll just remind you what we're doing. Half of b and squaring it now. So for this quantity, it's 4 divided by 2 and square it. Well, that number is 4. And I want to add that to this quantity. I'm kind of doing step 3 as well. It says add these numbers to both quantities. So x squared plus 4x plus 4. Okay, and I'm going to do it for the y's as well. I got to take half of 2. Once again, I'm going to use the left margin to do this. Half of b squared. Okay, b is going right here. So half of 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. So I need to add that to this quantity. Okay, you'll see this all come together in just a moment. Stay with me. All right, don't forget to add these numbers to both sides. We need to balance our equation. So since I added 4 here, I got to add 4 to the other side. Some students like to kind of put a check mark for that. Okay, 4 is there and 4 is there. This 4 just carried down, right? It's still part of the equation. But this one I need to balance, and then I added 1 here to the left side, so I need to add 1 to the right side. So basically 5, right? Added 5 to the left and right now. Okay, that's the messy part, the tough part to get used to. The rest goes pretty smoothly if you know how to factor some basic trinomials. Now we just need to factor these to finish the problem. Okay, so what are the factors of 4 that added up to 4? Remember, we worked on these on our warm-ups yesterday. What's 2? So I can factor this into these two binomials, x plus 2 times x plus 2. Okay. And that can be expressed as a quantity squared. Hence the phrase completes the square. That's what we just did. We completed the square. Okay. Whenever you take half of b and square it and do that right, this works out this way. All right, so we'll repeat it for the y's. What's the factors of 1 that add up to 2? 1 and 1. So I've got y plus 1 times y plus 1, or if you want to skip that step and you get it, we can just express as y plus 1 quantity squared. Okay, the right side, let's add up these numbers. We get 9. And that was really kind of the directions of the problem, to write it in standard form. If they ask us more questions about it, like find the center or radius, hopefully we can do that. Radius of 3, center is going to be -2, -1, but that is the answer. Okay. All right, so quick little summary. Step 1, we rearrange these. Step 2, we took half of these b terms and squared them. So go do the math. Once you get those numbers, you add it to the corresponding quantity. Okay? And then it's pretty easy to factor from there and completes. Okay? I'll pause this here and give you a chance to try 18. Go ahead. Okay, so step 1, here we go. Rearrange it. Half of b and square it now. I kind of did that work off to the side. Half of the negative 6 is negative 3. Squared is 9. Half of the 10 is 5. Squared is 25. We got to get those numbers and then add it to what? Both sides. Okay? Don't forget to do that. So I put the 9 in because it came from the negative 6. 25 came from the 10. Balance. Okay, this 9 should be negative up here too, and you subtracted it. Make sure you have that negative there. So they're going to cancel on the next step, right? Okay, like I said, that's the tough part. The factoring should be pretty easy because they're easy to factor. All right, so we get y plus 5 quantity squared here, plus the x minus 3 quantity squared equals 25. Any questions? Okay, our textbook doesn't have a lot of these. We added this to our curriculum because completing the square is a very common skill that comes up on the SAT almost every year. So we need to work on it. So we added it. So that's why I put a bunch of these examples in your notes. That's going to be part of your OTI. All right, so part of your assignment is the 19 through 22 in your notes. And then these 5 or 6 book problems. Okay, now heads up on the book problems. They are the more challenging ones. Okay, look at 71 and 72. It says solution points. That was the first example we did in our notes today. So that will be a very good resource for how you do those two. 73 is endpoints of a diameter. Okay, so endpoints of a diameter, think about that really quick. I'll erase it here in just a second. Here's endpoints of a diameter all the way across. So how do you think I could get the middle points? Midpoint formula, right? Midpoint formula. That's a good way to get your center to begin it. And then distance formula, once you have it, to find the distance from here to here. Or you can choose this point. Doesn't matter. Okay, so 73, midpoint, but look, it's a red one, right? You can QR code it. You got a video explanation on that too. So no excuse for not getting that figured out. All right. Okay, let me leave you with that.